Radiodr.co.za. Original podcast. Exclusive.
Black House Talk. Black House Talk. Black House Talk. Yo, we going live. Yo, we going live. We're about to do this. Silo. This is Prof. We doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Black House Talk.
Hello, how you guys doing?
It's Prof and Silo.
Welcome to the third episode of Black House Talk on radiodr.co.za/Black House Talk. Today we've got a real guest.
A real guest.
I say that because he's got a whole doctorate, a PhD,
Multiple languages.
Get this, he speaks English, Zulu, Mandarin, Kiswahili, Portuguese, and Swedish. That's amazing for one mind. We have today in studio Dr. Paul Tembe, Professor Tembe. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Cheers.
To get the ball rolling, do you mind telling us a bit about yourself? Where you're from? What do you do?
Well, I'm an old croc, 57 years old. I would like to regard myself as an 18-year-old with 36 years of experience, though. Born in Mlazi. After Mlazi, when things changed, I gallivanted the world, and I'm back home now. And thank you for the pleasure of sharing my experiences with you guys.
Yeah. So how often are you home in Durban?
I try to come as often as possible, like twice a year. Yeah.
And most of the time you live in China now, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm in China, I'm in Europe, although I have also a chair at UNISA where I'm teaching as well, mostly as a senior researcher at the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute.
Okay.
And then another chair, it's in China at Zhejiang Normal University at the Center for African Studies. Yes.
So these are all different jobs. So like this is like you sign contracts for all these different posts and chairships. I'm just asking because I don't know the academic world.
You don't sign contracts per se. It's your work that speaks for itself.
Okay.
And then a specific university says, okay, can you be our senior researcher?
Okay.
Can you be an associate? Can you be a visiting professor?
Yeah.
As now I'm a visiting professor at the Foreign Affairs University in Beijing.
An academic professional.
Exactly.
So at what point did you start getting invited to become like the professor to lecture there? Because you're saying the work speaks for itself. So it's like at what point was the voice...
The work speaking.
Yeah, was the work so loud that they're like, we have to get him here?
Actually, it started when I was in China. I was bored when I was 42, I guess. By then I'd done 15 to 17 years IT.
Mm-hmm.
That is my background. I was bored because there were youngsters like you catching up and not sleeping at night. And I was starting to need my sleep, so to speak. So I was 42, and I said, what do I have in my baggage? I realized that I've got languages, and I was in Europe at the time. I realized that I have languages in my baggage. I've got different cultures. I've traveled through Africa. So I just, coincidentally, I went to visit a friend at Uppsala University.
Okay, now I've got other questions. Were you married at this point?
Ever?
Yes, I was married at the point.
So how did the family feel about this? Where it's like, you're just going to shake up our lives like this financially? Or it sounds like such a risk.
I was in North Europe.
With the family?
Fortunately, I was in North Europe, yes. That is a total ball game, whereby you've got a good cover social system. It works like this. For example, when you work one job for 5 months, for 5 years, I mean to say, not 5 months, 5 years. When you work on a specific job for 5 years, you've got a right to go and retrain yourself. You can go back to school. That is their way of creating employment for new graduates to get into the job cycle.
Wow.
Nice.
So after you've worked for 5 years, you get what we call through a government sponsorship. You can go back to school. Either you change the direction of your studies or you continue within the same field. Now, the good thing with that is that when you go to school, we are going to contribute with real life experiences into academia. And if you change, but the main thing why they're using that system is to have this recycling.
So what they all is, because you moving forward, there's another space that's created
Exactly.
for somebody else to come in.
The new graduates, they will get in, then they'll get into the job market. Not like an old croc sitting on a leather chair until it throws his ass on that leather chair. It's
Something
like,
very
It's a
familiar.
very interesting system. Like,
yes. So it's
can South Africa afford to adopt the same system?
South
Yeah,
Africa can adopt to create any system at once.
But
It's just by choice. It's just by political will.
status quo is nice.
Yes. I don't even want to call it status quo. It is by choice, because anything that happens to you
Yeah.
somehow is by choice, except for poverty. Poverty is when you are disempowered. Poverty is when there's unfairness. Poverty is when the cycle of the basic needs stops somewhere. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
We don't even need to
I
go there.
always
Yeah.
refer to Maslow's hierarchy
Yeah,
of
we
needs.
don't even need to go there. Maslow's hierarchy of needs tend to have a natural cycle. Within the African value system, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs will be in the question of ownership. Here we have this fallacy of the right of ownership vis-a-vis the state of ownership. The right of ownership is where you take a paper and a pen and you say, I own this, and you purchase it. But the state of ownership is whereby you own the language, you own your community, you own the space around you. And that is the Maslow hierarchy of needs. But immediately you divorce yourself from your value system. In the case of South Africa, you run away from Isintu. Then you are in a problem. You run away from the rationale of an African communitarian village. You remember long ago when people go and plant.
Yeah.
We will take all the 8 houses in the same village and they go and plow one field this month.
And
Yagonkabinde.
Yeah.
The next month they will go and plow Gomete. The next month they will go and plow Tembe. So that is the state of ownership. You can never own something. That's a fallacy.
And
Yeah.
that comes from, I guess, Western culture, how it's diluted our own culture, where we're now moving to like a super...
No, it doesn't come from Western culture.
Where would
It's
you
a
say-
choice that we've made to see the good in the image of the others. Let's forget about colonialism and all those things.
Yeah.
Now it's a choice we are making. Ironically, in the global paradigm shift now, one of the best traders, that's a trading partner that we have, is China, for example, for the last 10 years. So the roads, the factories, the exports, the imports, everything that we get
Yeah.
throughout Africa is from China. But yet our legal system is based on the West. Nobody is forcing us to do that.
It's a choice.
So we're reading from the old book whilst eating from the new book. It's a paradox. But it is a choice.
Do you see a way forward from that as African countries, South Africa?
Before we go to countries, let us not be superfluous. There is macro and micro systems. It starts from an individual.
Yeah.
Okay. I just, for everybody else, can you just explain the difference between macro and micro? So
The macro system is when you take the whole forest. It means I'm going to change this field. I'm going to do something. You have a bird's eye view. You want to do everything. Like I'm talking about our South Africa, our Africa. That's a macro system. But let's break it down. These are societies. A society starts from individual. And then the smallest social unit is a family, which unfortunately is destroyed in South Africa and
the
rest of
family
Africa.
unit is dying.
Reason again, I'm going to repeat myself, because we are running away from Isintu Setu.
By choice.
We are running away from, that's a discussion for another day, the patriarch and matriarch and all that thing.
So the micro affects the macro.
The micro
So
affects...
you want to be able to change the bigger community.
Yes,
be able to start
let
with
me
yourself
let me
and
use
with your
another
family.
analogy, which
Yeah.
is a very urgent issue in South Africa, which started with the 1994 dispensation in South Africa. The paradigm shift of South Africa in 1994 is being praised all over the world. The spirit of forgiving, the spirit of humanity, the spirit of forgiving and all that, and we call it Ubuntu.
When Mandela getting out of prison and that's fine.
We call it Ubuntu. All of a sudden, this Ubuntu has become a metaphysical. It's a biblical Ubuntu. It's a biblical Ubuntu in the sense that it doesn't matter that you are suffering. You must be humane. You must consider others. Let's start afresh. That is why the West loves it so much.
Like
because they've run the race already. They are there in front. Oh, where is your Ubuntu? Why do you want my goods? Now, the mistake with this Ubuntu, with this biblical Ubuntu, oh, I feel you in me. I am me because of you. You can't use that to a person who has abused you for centuries.
Yeah.
Ubuntu has to be localized first, because Ubuntu is about humanness, not humaneness. There's a difference.
Okay.
Humaneness is assumed harmony. But what does this harmony base itself in? Let's go back to African value system. Harmony in the African value system responds to a family hierarchy. Ubaba, umama, ingane.
Yeah.
To those who might think that I'm propagating for patriarchy, in African value system, the mother calls the shots in the family. So don't say that I'm being patriarchal. Ugogo, when doesn't have her sniff, there'll be no eating in this house.
She runs this issue.
Actually, she runs the house. Today I'm 57 years old. I can't do nothing without my mom say so. And she's got great grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I cannot abuse my wife because my mom will be on my case. So, let me come back to Ubuntu. Ubuntu, we must localize it. Ubuntu has got 3 integral parts. The first one is the culture which we find in this world. This has been transmitted by generations before us. That is Isintu.
Yeah.
Which is culture.
Yes. Culture, customs, norms, rules, amasiko.
Yes.
Akwakumete, amasiko. Akangcobo, mapholoba, amasiko, akwamsomi, abakonomndai. Then we've got the actor, the performer. Because when you find this is Isintu, you act upon it, and it acts upon your body, and you then embody Ubuntu.
Yes.
It's not magical.
That's the physical
Yes.
personification of
Personification. Your talk. That's why I talked of the primordial notion of ownership. You
So
own
when you're talking about the
Sako.
actor-
Pardon?
When you're talking about the actor, are you talking about the individual?
Umuntu.
Yeah.
Umuntu. There is a value system, which is Ubuntu itself. There is norms and tradition, which is Isintu.
Yeah.
Then there is a performer of this Isintu. Then, only when you perform Isintu is not only for the Ngunis. Isintu can be for the Semitics in Ethiopia, in Eritrea, in Nigeria, the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Narodniks in the north of Kenya and the north of Uganda. Now, I'm making this on purpose to localize Ubuntu and the diversities of Isintu. Because the notion of saying, we are African brothers, we're a melting pot. Yes, I agree. But when I move to Kenya, I must learn Kiswahili and their value system, which is Isintu, based on Kikuyu or Kiswahili culture.
So when in
It's
Rome,
it's a form of induction to that locality. So if
then-
you get into a region and you aspire to be a productive citizen of that region, you must drink into their culture. But if you just say, we are African brothers, Ubuntu, 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 Ubuntu,
Where's your
then
Ubuntu?
there's a fallacy there. Because if I move to China or to Japan or to Korea or to Europe, I must learn their languages before I can partake in the economy. That is the first thing you get in Europe. You don't get any job before understanding the language.
Yes.
Even in the US, you must first understand English before you get the green card.
Why doesn't that happen in Africa in reverse?
It is a choice.
The choice that we've made as a country.
And which we are insisting. Now, what is it? What is the formula? You ask me practically how we can change this. We subdue modernity to our value systems, to our localized value systems.
Sure.
Okay. So, choice seems to be a very big theme with you, ne? And it resonates with me.
Besides poverty.
Yeah.
Poverty is when the cycle of production and basic needs is broken somewhere due to the
So-
lack of rationality. And the lack of this rationality is that we failed to subdue modernity or so-called modernity into our value system. Once we do that, then there's no need to have a
So
choice.
we must.
Okay.
Sorry, Prof.
So when it comes to choice, how I view choice, a lot of the time there's situations you're born into, ne?
Exactly.
And there's choices that get taught to you.
Exactly.
Except the mind is a very beautiful and dangerous thing in the sense that it likes patterns. So
Exactly.
it gets taught and you unconsciously follow these patterns that you've been taught.
Exactly.
So you are unconscious
Exactly.
of the choices that you are making
Exactly.
and the reality that you're constantly creating.
Exactly.
And then there's the other part where when you're conscious
Exactly.
and consciously enforcing your will on something
Exactly.
to bring a specific result.
Exactly.
So then with your theme of choice, as you are aware, a lot of South Africa there is choices that they are making, but they're
Exactly.
unconscious choices.
Exactly.
So where do we, how do we start balancing, like understanding this thing of conscious choice versus unconscious choice? And how do we actually change and awake people? Because like, for example, like we have the choice within black people where we don't support black people.
Exactly.
And this is an unconscious choice mostly because
Of
umama
what we've been
uvula
taught.
ispaza, etembisa. There's a spaza which is owned by Mom Miriam.
Yes.
She's been selling cold drinks since we were kids. You know, you could loan a bottle for R2 or whatever it is, and so on. Next door, I don't know.
What? A mall
it-
comes
yes.
up a block away, and
A
then
mall comes up, or the neighbors open up a different store, and they're not from here,
Exactly.
and then we stop supporting.
the
our-
person who's lived there 20 years, 30 years. yeah,
Stop
well,
supporting our own. So that I don't think is so much a conscious choice in a sense of. I don't think we're conscious enough to know. When I say we, I'm speaking to the collective. That
It's going back to what I said before. But before I go there, let us put it within the scientific prism. We're living in this modern world. The subconscious drives us.
yes.
the Eid.
Yes, the subconscious drives us. That which maybe you were not even taught at home, but you saw it happen. It's in your subconscious. Now, the choice comes from that. So you have to make an effort. The mere fact that we are talking about this evil choice that you've just mentioned now, this self-loathing system that you're speaking of now, you consciously know that by me going to this new mall, I'm feeding people outside my society or outside my community. I'm no longer. You have to consciously do that. And we've got good examples. Utata Mandela was in jail for 27 years because he broke that mold.
Yeah.
Utata Pigu, we know his tragedy because he broke that mold. Umam Dorothy Nyembe,
Yes.
we've got many heroes who consciously broke the mold. That's why my slogan hits the ground running. It's not business as usual. For the African, it's not business as usual.
It's not. We need to break into these norms,
Yes.
norms somehow.
So, the mere fact that we are sitting here and talking, my aim is that let us replicate our heroes who made conscious choices. What makes us different from other animals?
Consciousness.
We've been able to break away from instinct.
And use memory.
We are conscious.
Yeah.
You marry somebody that you love and you consciously divorce them if they are pulling you down to the gutter. Hayi, mina ngimelanga lento. Angiyonto
Yeah.
engayisayinela le.
Yes.
So
That is the power
that's what
that
I'm
we
calling
have.
for. That is the call to arms. And what I love with today is that our call to arms is no longer through bullets and all that. Our call to arms
Through
is to the most powerful weapon, as you mentioned earlier, the mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
The mind, we use it to rationalize. The mind, we use it to abstract. I promise you that each and every black man, when they abstract something in their sleep, there is a sense of guilt. Where am I? Who am I? Because spaces upon which we practice our identities, it's dwindling.
Yeah.
Especially after 1994. I'll explain that why. Before 1994, quote unquote, it was understood we were under apartheid.
Yes.
But after 1994, did we construct our own villages? Did we construct our own schools? No. We
Kept the system.
went to join schools that were already there
Yes.
and hoping that magically these schools overnight
We're gonna transform.
gonna-
they were
allow us.
to transform. Ironically, other schools and universities were constructed post 1994 and we're going to Toy there. And what we do, we buy Mercedeses.
Yes.
Our billionaires, they go to
Bourgeoisie.
Mauritius every weekend.
They're not giving back.
They don't. They are
Okay,
not
the
investing.
My
townships
other
are
question
still
is
dirty.
it their responsibility at all?
Pardon?
Is it their responsibility at all?
Choice. It's not about the
It's
responsibility.
about choice.
It's the choices they're making. I'm not accusing them. I'm not saying their choice is right or wrong. It depends what you want.
Yeah.
What you want. What choice is it that you make? What legacy are you leaving for posterity? You want that when somebody, 50 years, 100 years from now, if Wikipedia is still there, when they go, they say, oh, so and so was the richest man in South Africa.
But Tembe, wouldn't you say we as Africans, as South Africans, don't have enough role models for us to know that there is that choice? Like being portrayed as our heroes. Like right now, the biggest heroes are the guys with the Mercedes Benzes, the big houses, and it doesn't really matter where they get the money from, but the fact that they have it and they don't put back into their community.
We are making a mistake now. We're digressing now in our conversation. It seems like we're moving to the space of who. The who doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There are 4 questions. There is what, there is why. And these 2 questions have been answered. What we're talking about now
Yes.
is better lives for all. Why we can't achieve that is because we're making wrong choices. Now we're remaining with one question. How?
Do we change our choices?
How do we change how do we achieve the what? Which is better life for all.
Okay.
Let's forget about the who.
For-
The who doesn't matter. The who is just a coordinator. The who is like a government.
I was
A
just about to
government,
say,
a government is just a coordinator of goods, coordinator of systems.
the government is
to
here
make
to
the
serve the
laws.
people.
It's when you've just come out of jail, which apartheid or colonialism, it was jail.
Yeah.
You can't immediately have a government to serve people. That's a fallacy. Because the forces that created a government, their sense of being was to destabilize the government.
yes.
Yeah.
So it is the responsibility, again, the choice of each and every individual to say, I'm going to change myself first. I'm going to change my family.
Micro.
Micro to the macro. There's not going to be any magic. And what is the framework I'm proposing? I'm appealing. I'm suggesting. First to the youth, hit the ground running. How? By subduing modernity to our value system, which is Isintu. Ironically, since 400 to 500 years of colonization, the so-called ubuqaba and backwardness
Yeah.
and the African village persists in all of us. Even when I have a house in Umhlanga or I have a house in Sandton, when I want to really have a good time, I go back to Umlazi or Mbumbulu.
Yes.
Ngiyohlala namajita.
Ngoba kuthule la.
Ngiyohlala shawa indlamu.
Shanyam.
Yes. So
I
what is
agree with you
written,
there.
your culture writes in you, the words that are spoken. Even parents, I've seen parents move to places like Sandton so that their kids don't
get the best.
suffer like the way they
trauma.
suffered. And unconsciously, sort of, they are running away from backwardness in the townships. Now, they are in Sandton. Now, the tragedy there is that these kids grew up without speaking isiSotho, isiXhosa, or isiZulu. And they are not eloquent enough into this capital European value system. Because make no mistake,
You're black.
You're not well enough.
no, not only that.
Yes.
Make no mistake. Caucasians, whom we happen to share space with here in South Africa, they follow their value system. It's just that you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So your kids in Sandton find it hard when they visit KwaMashu and Umlazi or when their cousins come.
They don't understand the value
And
system.
yet they don't understand the value system that empowers their neighbor Caucasians. So you are breeding non-citizens. So your generation is the last generation of schizophrenic identities. Schizophrenic identities in the sense that when you're growing up, ubukhuluma isiZulu, abulala Sepedi, ubasisuthu, you still have that in you. But when you get into the corridors of power where you get your capital, your monetary capital, because you've got a variety of capitals. You've got cultural capital, symbolic capital, social capital, political capital. But you must be able to convert these capitals into monetary capital in order for you to subsist as a person and as a people.
Yes.
And if all these capitals you got from the township, from the African village, and from African languages written all over you, when you reach the spaces of converting those capitals,
It's
your
all-
capitals are not allowed.
Yes.
What is it that you are converting? So at home,
Like you can't
umuntu.
monetize it.
At home, umuntu.
Yeah.
There, you are just a commercial unit
A number. in
for
the system.
somebody else to monetize his capitals. It means your identities remain ekaya, at home.
Yeah.
In the office, you are supposed to be this person you don't know. So you're wearing these many hats, whilst other races, they wear one hat.
That covers all.
Tell me one thing that has been invented or designed ergonomically in accordance to the black man's life. Ngaphandle kwesagila nehawu.
Ish. There's a show on Netflix called, what's it, Killer Mike, ne?
Oh yeah, Killer
Where
Mike.
he tries to live
Yo.
black and
Yes.
he
It's
tries
called,
to
what, trigger warning.
trigger warning. He tries to live black and buy products from black people only.
Yeah.
It is
Killer
the
Mike
hot-
is ridiculous. man. Like,
Exactly.
he's taken a very comedic entertainment approach to it, but what the intention of
And
what
and
he
and
thinks
let's be clear
it's
here
hard.
to those who are listening or might be listening. We're not denigrating black people.
Yes.
But what we're trying to say is we've fallen into the trap or into the state beyond being or having schizophrenic identities, but we've fallen into the state of passive consumption. You buy a Huawei for 8,000 rands for 12,000 rands. or you buy whatever phone, a Motorola for 8,000
Yes.
just to talk. You do the very same thing that you could have done with a phone of 200 rands.
Yes.
You use it. Ubani jola nobani. You are not entering the so-called third industrial revolution and fourth industrial revolution,
Yes.
whereby you can design something sitting here, send it to Japan, they redesign it, send it to China, they redesign it, you send it to Sweden, and then somebody that just presses a button and it comes out here in your 3D printer.
Yes.
You can learn programming from any cell phone, mobile phone that exists today.
Okay. I just want him to continue about his theme that he was going to go on regarding Killer Mike.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Killer Mike tries to live black and buy only black products and services, and it's probably the hardest thing he does. There's no black-owned car. There's no like black-owned, very little black-owned food, black-owned like food products, black-owned hair products, black-owned anything. There's very little of it.
He
And
even
it's-
goes as far as
it's
getting
walking.
a bicycle.
Yeah, from a black-owned bicycle shop.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, so like I understand when you say we haven't built nothing. We haven't entered those industrial revolutions where, and it's crazy as Africa, we have all the natural resources, but not the skill to create.
We have
these
the skills.
products.
We have the skills. We have the skills
need
where
a
we haven't
mindset
made
shift.
the right choices.
Yes.
Those skills, as I said, those skills, we tend to sell them. Okay. Those skills, we tend to sell them. What does it translate into in the long run? It translates that, I've heard even this argument, oh, don't chase investors away.
That's where we're
Aibo.
currently at.
They've been here since 15th century. They'll never go away
Cheap labor.
because we've got everything. So the narrative, don't chase investors away, I don't understand it.
What is it? Fear mongering techniques
They-
to try to control your behavior.
It goes back to this paradigm that to the metrics that I'm trying to draw here. If you say we will chase investors away, it means we have to succumb to investors. But the investors that are coming to empower themselves.
Not us.
Are coming with, I put my money where I'm going to get value.
And they take the money home.
Yeah, exactly. So why should I draw the life of my future generation in accordance with an investor?
Yeah.
The investor must reach or must ascribe to the
us.
prerequisites. You cannot go to the bush and there are thorns in that bush. You say, oh, thorns, I will help you. The thorns, they'll prick you.
Yeah, you can't expect the thorns to change.
Exactly. There's a chapter I write in one book, China-Africa relations with African perspective. There I propose that because we've been beaten in this monetary world, once our goods leave the ground and enter market systems,
Yeah.
we are far behind. Those don't seem to add value to our communities. I say, let us then draw a system or a charter whereby a prerequisition for extracting goods in Africa should benefit local communities before those goods even leave the ground. Can we get a way of monetizing our goods before they even leave the ground?
Yeah.
Because the value chain of market system has erased us to those who use computers. We've been deleted from the cycle of monetary supply chain.
Yeah, and it's crazy that there'll be no cell phones without Africa. That's the
There you go.
craziest thing.
So, okay, cool. To the youth out there, and for me, I still classify anybody under the age of 40 as a youth. I know people think
35
that's
is the legal
ridiculous. Yeah,
age
I know.
of
I
youth.
get the legal thing, but okay. Generally, when people say youth now, they say people. They generally mean people who still have power to change the direction of their lives.
Yes.
Or impact a lot of people.
Okay,
So for
40's
me,
good.
I still do think that even even at 50, you still have power to impact gang people and change the trajectory of your whole life or your whole entire family,
Yeah.
or you can have massive impact. So for me, when I say youth, I mean anybody who still has any power within them to change.
There's a new
They like-
science, new is like almost 2 decades ago. actually even more than that, but it got traction 2 decades ago. We call it brain elasticity.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yes.
That your brain rewires.
Yes.
Rewires as you
Your
learn
brain
things.
rewires. Let's go biologically. If you have an accident at a certain age and they remove a part, let us say it's a venicus here
a part
for
that is
speech.
important.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's another part of the brain that will be
Take over
that
that.
will take
They
over,
took over
that.
the responsibilities.
The rewiring.
Yes.
So that is biologically that might be proof of brain elasticity. So
Yeah.
there is also brain elasticity that is dormant in all of us.
Yeah.
I just said earlier on that I switched from doing things with my hand, which was IT and programming, at the age of 42
Yes.
because conditions allowed me.
Yeah.
I switched and I went totally academic into social sciences.
Yeah.
I learned a new language, which is Mandarin, at the age of 44. I started learning my Japanese.
Can
at
you
that
write
age.
Mandarin as well?
Yes, I
wow.
write and I write
You're fully
and
fluent
read it.
now.
Yeah, but I started that very late in life. So I'm trying to support you on the statement
Yeah.
of youth.
Give me hope for
You
my
still
French.
have power.
Yes.
So then I'm like, well, again, one of the questions which I asked you before we started was if you woke up tomorrow and you're 28 years old,
yes.
what would you do? And right now it's like there's youth, even people in their 30s, because like life has been lit and life is lit, in terms of it being hard.
Yes.
And people are having a hard time trying to set a trajectory for their life.
Yes.
People are just taking whatever is available, and
Exactly.
there's people stuck at call centers. There's where it's like
Exactly.
this is the only thing I can do, even though I've
Exactly.
studied as much as I could and
Exactly.
so on. So only when 20, 30 years later will they be able to look back and realize how much power they still
Exactly.
had to change their life.
Exactly.
So the thing I'm trying to get to here is, what advice can you give?
Yeah, I like that your question also was supported by very concrete example. You get these people who call you in the morning. They tell you that you owe Absa Bank or you owe African Bank, and they sound like they are howling at you, like they are as if this bank is theirs.
Yeah.
Remember that these calls are being recorded. Oh, when will you pay us? Those are the call center people that are stuck there. It is the premise is that when you do that, you are doing it from an individual perspective. And you said it very nicely. Because it's lit, therefore they end up at a call center. Nobody said, go to the call center. Nobody said, stop hitting other doors. Hit the ground running, open all doors of knowledge. If you look at it with one eye, you want a salary at the end of the month. That is being individualistic. But the rationale of you being that individualistic, you want to have a good credit record, you want to have money in the bank so that after a first degree or second degree, you are able to buy a house and have that corporation little car. And in your mind, you think that by the time you are 40, you have a Mercedes-Benz. And by the time you are 60, you have a big house where you can like stretch your little toes when diabetes starts to set in. That's what happened because you've been stressed all of your life.
Yes.
You have not had
Yeah.
quality life.
Yeah.
Now, there are three choices here that I'm giving you. Stress your life and become part of a crowd that you'll have nothing to show your community except for this house that is in the gated communities.
And the Mercedes-Benz.
Or stress and the Mercedes-Benz that you still don't own.
Yes.
That belongs
And
to
the
bank.
house that you still
And
don't
there's a balloon
own.
payment waiting.
Waiting for you to buy another car at the end of that Mercedes.
If you interview these people that are just about to go to their pension life, they're all waiting the payout of 500,000 or 2 million so that they start business. Newsflash, you don't start business at the age of 60. What do you know about business?
Yes.
The mind is a muscle as well. If you do push-ups every day, you're going to get agile muscles and you're going to bulk up. You're going to be flexible.
Yes.
So we talked about habit forming before. Because you have subdued your traditions to modernity, your mind has been subdued or gotten used to slavery. Because getting salary every month, that is slavery. Full stop. Let's not go about the bush. Let's not beat about the bush.
It's usually a fraction of what the company is making, maybe even less.
Not only that, all your debit orders will eat this check, and you are leaving then.
So on the first,
So you don't have a life. First, you are not converting your social, political, cultural capital into monetary.
Yeah.
You are just an agent, a schizophrenic. You don't even have citizenship, by the way.
What do you mean by that?
Citizenship is ownership. Citizenship is not a paper that you get from Home Affairs.
It's not your ID.
Citizenship is ownership. And ownership is not right of ownership. Ownership, do you own your family?
No.
Can you afford to say, wife, stay at home now, or I'm staying at home,
I don't
taking
think-
care of
Not
the
in
kids?
this economy.
very few people can afford that reality.
So I'm going back to that thing. If I were youth today,
Yeah.
I will consciously refuse to adhere to the system where I'm feeding somebody else's capital. Look, if you don't have a plan, somebody else will use you to fulfill their plans. If you don't have a dream, or if your dream is cockeyed, and when by cockeyed dreams, all dreams are good. But if you have a dream whereby modernity or other cultures subdue your culture, you're working for them.
Cool. So, just for playing devil's advocate, I hear what you're saying there,
Yes.
and it sounds very empowering and very beautiful. And I'm like, but I still have to pay the rent at the end of the month.
Yes.
My kids gotta eat.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, well, kids gotta eat.
Yes.
There's still the precious of things. So I'm like, in that reality, I still feel like, okay, I have to
Yes.
continue working at the call center.
Yes. Yes.
So at what point am I going to be able to empower myself to make a change then?
You need to educate yourself. I think.
to hit the ground running, you cannot hit the ground running if you're in chains.
Yeah. Sure.
How do you run when you're in chains? And the best chains we have today are bullets of sugar. Those chains are in our brains. Prison doors opened in 1994, but we still have this invisible policeman. It's like if you condition chicken, you condition them that whenever they leave the chicken shed, they get shocked. Even when you switch off electricity and you try to push them out,
They won't.
they won't go beyond that. And that is where we are. You cannot hit the ground running because you are in chains. First, get rid of those chains. Pico said it very nice. But he was approaching it from another existential and another performance point. Because identity is about performances. Now, that is very scary. That you going to work every day is your identity. You going to work for somebody else and empowering somebody else, that's your identity. That's good. Because
That's
it's
the
very nice.
performance.
Right. I write what I want. I write. What do you do when you write? You imagine. So people are saying that just break those chains. Just break those chains and write what you want.
Yeah.
And logically, you are going to write what is good for you. And not write what you see in the mini image. We still do it today.
Yeah.
You see something and say, "Amlungwami, aungamla."
I've gotten that the most in Durban.
So
Yeah.
if I were youth
still say
today, let
Yeah.
me not even go to if I were youth today. Let us leave our brothers and sisters in the call centers and all that. We're three people sitting here. You've got an old croc that is over half a century. I'm 57. You've got you aspiring youngsters were sitting at supposedly is your living room. But I don't see sofas that cost 40,000 rands and big screen TV that costs 50,000 rands that you're going to pay for until you are gray. You've made this podcast. I'm sitting here with you because I want to replicate my experiences to you. And you've made a conscious choice to open this podcast so that you put other ideas, so that you create heroes, so that you search in the dustbin of history of people that are different from the mold. I'm calling it a dustbin of history because we're coming from a very traumatic situation. This is the choice you are doing. You are hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
On top of that, you could be now saying that with my Saturday, during the week, I work there as an editor. On my Saturday, I'm going to McDonald's. After that, I'm going to wash cars. You are hitting the ground running. And maybe you're interviewing me because you said, hey, uskhotheni leli time leli.
No, we wanted to suck all your knowledge and put it on the internet. Yeah. That's really why.
For me, okay, so earlier on he made reference to role models, no?
Exactly.
So, and for me, I resonate with what he says in the sense of, okay, so deciding, okay, cool, I want to get into the film industry, right?
Exactly.
So even getting into the film industry, there was at church, there was a guy called Karabo.
Exactly.
He probably doesn't even know this, where he's the main reason why I got into the TV industry.
Exactly.
And I hear him talk about all these things, etc. And I'm like, oh, it's a visual art form. And
exactly.
Because at the point I was still doing art in school, etc. And it never, at any point during my whole entire life, until matric, did it click that filmmaking can be a possibility.
Exactly.
And until I met somebody who is black and is in that industry, did I not know that I could actually go that direction. So I decided that's the direction I'm going to take.
Yeah, similar.
Cutting a bunch of stories out. I'm in the industry now.
Exactly.
And I'm an editor.
Exactly.
Meeting Uzan Nkosi, who's got a company called Ants and so on. And I'm like, oh, he's black. He's got his own production company. He does stories and so on. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to just work for somebody. So I'm like, at that point in time, sure, I've read books and so on. And, you know, okay, there's reading a book like I've read Think and Grow Rich. I read these books which I read when I was in primary and while I was in high school. So I've been always aware that from primary, I was aware that there's a 5% chance that you'll escape your current reality, that you will grow old, that you will get older and actually manage to build a reality that's different from your parents or even better than your parents.
Exactly.
Just a 5% chance. So that's very small. And so I'm like, how do I at least try to build myself in a way to be able to try build a better reality than my parents? And my parents' reality is great, considering where they come from. So I'm like, I need to move forward with that. So then I'm like, meeting Uzan Nkosi, I was like, oh wow, I can actually do it. So it's like reading it versus seeing it is two different
things.
Because like here I'm trying to convince myself I can do it. Now I meet somebody who's done it and he's black, and I'm like, it validates me. I'm like, oh damn, I can actually do it. So part of this podcast is like having you here.
Yes.
It's like, for me, my biggest annoyance with everything before the internet, né?
Exactly.
And even a lot of people your age, including yourself, it's like the internet presence doesn't really exist.
Exactly.
So the role model that you actually are, the guidance and everything that you actually have to offer to people, me, the younger version of myself and so on, doesn't exist anywhere. It's not even like I can turn on SABC 1 or whatnot and see like, hey, this is a possible trajectory for your life. This is a possible trajectory here, etc. So one of the main things with this podcast was having, giving people the opportunity to actually see that there's more than one road you can take for your actual life.
Showing people representation matters is a key term that's flying around, and showing other people that there are the black people in film and science and this. Yeah, well, that's part of the huge Black House talk. It's black people talking about breaking a choice to change their ideas.
Making a choice to change your ideas. And what you are doing, you are not only creating platforms for the youth, but you're also creating platforms for the elder generation to be able to replicate themselves. And not only those who have succeeded in something, but those who are bold enough to be able to say that if I had another chance, I could have done this. I've talked to some of my colleagues, people I grew up with, and they'll say, and some people who are elder than me, they will say, pardon me, we didn't know better at that time. That's why we restricted you. For example, most parents, they didn't want their kids to go to drama schools. They didn't want their kids to go to become musicians. But because the tendency was that there's a one singular linear trajectory. That's why I'm talking about multiple doors of knowledge.
Yeah.
One singular linear trajectory of existence is that you study, you graduate, you get a job, you stick to it, and then you pension.
Yeah.
That singular linear of trajectory is the killer.
Yeah, no, I had to fight my parents hard on that one. Like, just like, I'm not gonna get a normal job, but my job is hard to find a job in film.
They ask you, do you have an office? Where do you work?
Usebenza.
Yes. When we are done,
Leto yako, Prof, he plays music, and I'm sure it's similar. Your parents are like not having this music.
Oh no, music was okay. So yeah, I think it was very clear in high school exactly what child I was. It was like this guy. Yeah, he does this drawing thing. He plays guitar. He does this rap thing. Where he goes like when. So other kids were sneaking out to the parents' house to go out there and drink and so on.
Exactly.
The only time I ever not snuck out the house, at least lied to my parents to go to other things, it was always related to music or whatever art I was doing. So effectively, it was for the betterment of myself. But I would have to lie to my parents, saying, "No, are we going to, Ashley's house, and we're going to be chilling there?" Ashley would lie to his parents, and then we'd go off and we'd be polishing our skills in terms of the art form that we do at that point in time. So that was whereby all the other kids were like, and I'm like, so I think, yeah, you are right in terms of...
Let me mention something. We've spoken about brain elasticity. You can change it anytime in your life, blah, blah, yabada, yabada. But there's a twist that is very important. Now I'm talking to youngsters. Because this should be deliberate. The age of 16 to 19 and up to 20 sometimes, that is the most critical point.
It's when your prefrontal, what's the cortex is learning.
Yes.
It's
that
fully
is
growing.
The most crucial point. The changes that you get at the time, tumultuous or otherwise, they will guide your life to the greater parts.
Yeah.
And because I've said already, we live in a sick society somehow. So I would like youngsters that age to be deliberate to seek change. And change is manifest in a natural manner, in the sense that you become an average of the 5 people that you hang around with. I'm coming back to you. Abanye mabeyo dagwa. Go and have good time. You'll have this friend of yours. Had you mixed yourselves with these people who go bashaye vosho, I don't know what was the vosho when you were 15, or it was twist or bum jive or whatever. You then become.
That's too old,
all of them.
That's too old.
I'm talking about my times here. I'm aware.
We can see.
I'm talking about bell bottoms and all that. Yes. So, I'm talking now to youngsters who've just become 15. The young boys are bakalook jola. The young boys who aspire want to smoke. The young boys who want to start benzene, I'm telling them now. What you do when you're 15 until 20 depends on the people that you hang around with.
You're the sum of your friends.
You are the sum of your friends. Because we are social animals.
Yebo.
So that in that group, I have something to say directly. Don't hang around with people who don't add value. Don't hang around with people that always will put you into trouble. Full stop.
Down.
But beyond that, when you are 20 and you've failed your matric, or you have problems with your first year at uni, start hitting multiple doors of knowledge. That is a must. That is what we call hit the ground running. Because your degree, it's been proven in South Africa, your degree won't work for you.
It's useless.
When you say hitting multiple doors of knowledge,
Yes.
could you break that down?
Hitting multiple doors of knowledge. Use your cell phone to listen to podcasts. Use your cell phone to design little things.
And I
Read and read and read. Black men, please read.
was telling my little brother that like similar. Like, I'm like, YouTube can be entertainment and education
And
at the
educational
same
at the
time.
same
It's
time.
like you're not really doing well at school. Do well. Like, focus on what you're doing and spend less time watching music videos on YouTube. Watch more things that are going to open your mind. You
In
know?
the last
That's
two,
very
in the
true
last
about
2
them.
years, 3 years, let me say two. There was a market container center. There is that container center is still there, a market container thing. People sell hair pieces, people sell electronics pieces, people sell clothes and all that. So
Yeah.
I hired 2 containers there. One was for internet designers, and one was for programming. There, amongst internet designers, we had 5 people who will go to Cisco networking programs. Then one boy suggested that we actually subscribe because it's found a lot of good things there. Then they learned from the computers, sitting there, the containers. And when we close, they'll use their cell phones to go and sit in a spot which has got this city Wi-Fi. Tshwane City has got,
Oh yeah.
has got free Wi-Fi.
How did
They'll-
Tshwane get Wi-Fi before
They-
Joburg though?
They'll go,
Tshwane's got a better government.
they'll go and sit there, continue, and then the problem we had now, it was when they were going to certify themselves, then we had to seek funds for them to go and certify themselves.
Yeah.
You just go and write exams. You don't go to school or anywhere. You sit on the web, you learn these models,
And then you go and write
and
the
you
test.
go and write.
Because that's what school is. It's just somebody's doing it for you. But
So
you just have
now
to be.
I would like to call this
That's
Cottage.
beautiful because like that's self-taught
Yes.
effectively. That is,
I would like to call I call it in my writings now of late when I speak about fourth industrial revolution. By the way, we're having this Kigali global dialogue where we are discussing all these alternative knowledge systems and alternative learning systems. We've partnered. There's an organization also from India, because they support the girl child system. There's a revolution in Kigali, free an African girl child through gigabytes. There's free Wi-Fi there.
Information is power.
Yes.
Type of-
Free the girl child system, not through shouting slogans of gender equality and all that and all
Yeah.
that and all that, through gigabytes. So they've partnered with one group in Kigali. So we're having this workshop. It's going to be from the 6th to the 9th of July. I'm one of the speakers there in terms of identities and fourth industrial revolution. In the paper that I'm presenting there, which is going to be part of my chapter of the hit the ground running in my book, which is chapter 4, directed to the youth, I say break the mold, like you've done. We're not sitting at the radio station now. I call this cottage industry. But in order for the cottage industry to add more value, we need cottage education. There are two archaic systems in the world, which fortunately for us, we can break them without any problem because they were created in the West. It is the jail system and educational system.
Okay.
Those are most archaic, useless things after the third industrial revolution. Because the third industrial revolution is a democratization or amalgamation of knowledge.
Yes.
Remember that during the first industrial revolution, your grandfather had to wait 10 years or 20 years for the gramophone to come from abroad.
Yes.
Second industrial revolution, you had to apply for this telephone and wait. Or wait for the record to come.
Yeah.
Also is really radio, but it still doesn't exist. You have to wait for a year or 2 years. That industrial revolution, you had to wait for, wait for your Flosham and all these things. The Brandwoods. Brandwoods and Floshams. The latest, the Pringle.
Yeah.
Wait for those things. But come the third industrial revolution, there was lesser wait for the CD and all that. Comes the fourth industrial revolution, you can know what Beyonce ate. Not because it's important what
You
Beyonce
can 3D
ate,
print
but
a product.
can you change that then and go to nanotechnology and know exactly what was discovered today? You've got two beautiful outlets. I'm not doing advert for them. You've got a newspaper called Conversation. You've got a newspaper called Quads. You get in there, you get what was done in nanotechnology yesterday. And what are the problems of experimenting on mice about this and this? You read it every day. It's not rocket science.
Speaking
There's
about
what we call a 10,000 hour experience. You're a guitarist, you know this.
Yeah.
You can
10,000 hours.
Yes, you can play 2 chords until they bore you. But after 10,000 hours, you play so bad that it becomes good and unique because it's yours. Our brains, because we are rational animals, they don't allow boredom. So if you keep it, you'll come up with something. But to cut the long story so short and not digress, it is okay because this so-called institutional education is allowed, is what allows us to have upward social mobility. But because we are so many, try to give yourself an advantage and your group and your community an advantage by absorbing all other types of knowledge, which I call cottage education, which will translate to what you have here, which is cottage industry. You didn't even need to register for this because our laws are archaic.
we have registered.
There's a beautiful YouTube video that is circulating about cryptocurrency.
Yes.
Crypto.
The Secretary of
Get
State.
into crypto, guys.
You can buy your Bitcoin, guys.
Yes, the cryptocurrency and the financial institutions.
Oh, they don't like it.
Especially the IRS.
You're talking about the one where they want to ban Bitcoin.
Yes, they want it banned because without getting into the
affecting
petrol,
the dollar.
without getting into the petrodollar issue, I knew you were going there. Without getting into the petrodollar issue and oil and all that, without us getting there, they are trying to reverse the wheel of history. Cryptocurrency is cottage education.
Yes, it comes from the people in small groups.
Uninstitutionalized.
Yes,
it's breaking down
decentralized.
Let's go to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was bored. He didn't go to classes anymore. That's why we have different phones. By the way, you know the history.
Yeah.
That's why we have different phones. He was bored. He went back to his room. He started doing something.
And the thing with me with crypto is that like the first time this happened with the internet, we decentralized or removed the government's power to control information.
Exactly.
Now what we're doing is removing the government and the banking industry's power to hold and manage our money.
Exactly.
So
actually,
I can understand.
websites as well.
It puts them in in the
They are not needed.
in the notion that I have about the government is supposed to coordinate
Yes.
our goods.
Yes.
The government is not supposed to own social goods.
Yeah.
They are just they are arbitrators, so to speak.
Do you see the governments of the world becoming smaller and less
Exactly.
bigger in the role they
All
play?
successful
But
countries.
that's not going to happen without a fight, though.
Yeah.
No.
They run out of money.
Here. Let's reverse a little bit. In all successful countries, Korea, China, Japan, Northern Europe, municipalities have got more power than the center.
To run whatever they need to run.
Power is in the municipalities. Power is not at the center.
Consolidated.
Yeah.
Yeah. The center holds the strings and tries to give direction because there's what we call random theory. Random theory sometimes tends to impact on societies. So they need to be kept somehow
Yeah.
to keep the so-called in place, so-called nation state in place, to keep the so-called in place, a civilizational state in place. Because although we are social beings, as I said about Isintu, there are some value systems that you adhere to in order to have identity, and your identity gives you ownership which makes you a citizen. Now let's go back to the discussion just for a second. Christians, they have to kneel down, make that geometric thing with their hands, sometimes close their eyes and put their hands together and look up and pray. That is the performance for you to embody Christianity. Islam, Muslims have got to kneel down and look a certain direction, and salah, which is to pray 5 times a day and dress in a particular way. That is the performance of embodying the Islam religion. Buddhists, they've got to meditate and abstain from certain actions and have this quiet in order to attain nirvana.
Yeah.
Now, why is it expected that Ubuntu happens magically then? Where is the ritual that places the South African, I'm going to localize, because you cannot talk about culture without localizing it,
Yeah.
because it loses value. Geography is everything when you talk about culture. If culture is going to become a capital, or if social capital is going to become capital, there is a field where it is produced. So that's why I want to localize it, so that we're able to convert it into monetary capital. Now, if there is no performance or ritual that ascribes into our empowerment,
Yeah.
how are you then going to have the end result, which is money or which is wealth? We're not even talking about generational wealth here.
Yeah. It's just basic monetization.
How are you going? That is basic monetization. The sum of 1 + 1 is 2.
So then, how do we heal this?
Subdue modernity to your value system. Become yourself. See the good and the future, the good of future in
So
yourself.
does this mean that we have to create our performance in that case? In that sense?
No, we are lucky as Africans. We are very lucky. The African village is still alive. The communitarian value, like what you do, let me call all my neighbors. Hey, gents, indlovu wile, I've gotten little money, let me go and drink. That communitarian spirit,
We keep it.
we keep it. The partnership that you are forming here, the two of you, is what I would like to see happen, because in everything I've done in my life, everything, changing lanes, changing professions,
Yeah.
going to different countries and continents, I've been with somebody that I've met and they've pushed me. Like your role models that you met. Role models don't need to be old only. Mentors don't need to be older than you. partnership can be created across the whole spectrum of age. Unfortunately, older generation tend to be scared and egocentric. But that can change with you making a decision that you are changing them. You don't care. The problem is, you see Prats Banban with the Mercedes, and you also want a Mercedes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who said that was right? You are making a choice.
Yeah.
A subconscious choice most of the time. But for me, I think what's holding us back a lot as South Africans is just like the lack of us, or like our ambition, lack of ambition to wanna tap into those multiple information streams that allow us to grow. You know, it's not an in thing to be reading and stuff like that. It's not cool. Like, it's not in the mainstream to do. Like, to do, you just gotta shisanyama kawash. Like, currently as it stands, it's very rare, you know, to find people that wanna build, you know, the country, the economy.
Yeah, this goes back to you are the sum of the 5 people you hang out
I
with.
guess, yes. And I guess a lot of people are in groups where they don't have those people even around them, the role models around them, the 5 people.
So that's why your message and your project that you are doing now becomes important, because then it throws me back to the issue of ownership. Why do we see our people destroying schools, banning schools? It's easy to do that because we still have in our mind that those things don't belong to us.
Belongs to them.
If to them, yes, there is this them and us. Even if our reality today, there is that them and us, let us break that mold. To advance as a human being is about breaking molds. Unfortunately, most of our motivational speakers, they talk about their financial success. They talk about how they suffered for them to get degrees, how they suffered for them to become millionaires. There's still a fallacy there. I don't find a community. That even gives space that our media platforms, from radio, television, we hero worship former losers. I was a drug addict. Now I'm a successful actor. Oh, I used to prostitute myself and sleep with everyone. Now I'm converted. I'm newly born. Bullshit.
Thank you, sir.
You are not newly born. You've just failed at another game. And now you are coming back and feeding rubbish to our children.
Siyabonga.
So you mean our children must be drug addicts first before they can make it? If you take statistics of our motivational speakers, there are 2 kinds.
What ones I were?
One that talks about their wealth and how they made it, from rags to riches. 2, about those ones who say, I was in the gutter, I came up. You went to the gutter by choice. Nobody had a pipe of benzene feeding you.
I don't know. I'm 2 ways about it, in a sense of, I guess, going from doing drugs and blowing up your life all the way through to becoming a big time success. Right?
Exactly.
That story, to a degree, is empowering in terms of the impact that your choices have.
Exactly. But that is a remedy. A remedy means that you went wrong somewhere because we as a community, we have a wrong blueprint. What I'm talking about is, let us fix our blueprint.
Yeah.
Let us fix our blueprint. We are still going to have drug addicts, but we're not going to hero worship them when they've gone to rehab. You said our children don't have role models. Our children have role models. All of them come from rehabs.
Yes.
Now, the question of ownership and citizenship also falls within another spectrum. If you don't have the sense of ownership and you scream about your rights, it means you'll never understand your obligations. And a person that is hungry will never understand their obligations. So ownership, a system that allows you to own, even if I feel like here, I'm here.
Yeah.
Ntate Hamedi brought me here. He allowed me to own your space with you, to share your space with you.
Yeah.
That is the ownership. So that sense of ownership allows you guys to empower me, and in reverse, I'm empowering you.
Yeah, we evolving each other. In
We haven't talked about our rights here since I've entered here. We've all been responding to our obligations.
Yes.
Then the obligations is a stepping stone to your rights. The way it is though in our country, we speak about our rights, we talk about our rights every day. Ngibonisa isibunu, hey, it's my right. Not because I'm dressed like this, I'm what? It's my rights. We have right of this, right of that, right of that, right of that. I've never heard of somebody. Then you complain, oh, there's so many criminals. We have to strengthen the police. We have to whatever. No, it's not going to happen by magic. These people have got no ownership. If they don't have any ownership, it means they've got no citizenship.
They've got nothing to lose as well.
They've got nothing to lose because you don't know your obligations. You are not even aware that you're a member of society. Like you said before, you're struggling to pay your rent, you're struggling to pay for your car. Who told you to do that? Why? I'm not being cynical here. Who said you shouldn't buy big screen TV? I know you can afford it. Big screen TV here, also for Kumba Kumba and all that. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly my point.
Yeah, well, it's a choice, I guess, that they make again.
Not that they make, that we all make.
Yeah.
That we all make.
Just so this moving away before you run out of time, I wanna you no longer live in the country a lot. You've been in China.
No, I live in a country a lot now since 4 years ago.
Since 4 years ago.
I make it a point to be here.
Come back home.
To be in South Africa at least 8 months, 7 months a year.
Okay, but I want to get to your Chinese speciality. You said you've spoken Mandarin. You've been into the Asian. So how's life in Asia? What I know, since you've lived there, I want to know like the difference between what is painted by the West and what's actually going down in the region, you know, and then obviously let's move into how China is affecting Africa in the modern day.
You remind me of Bob Marley, who feels it knows the most, or who knows it feels the most. China has taught me that the most important thing is that a society is not a marketplace. It's a space to be lived in the space of comfort, is a space for production, and monetization comes as the last thing in the ranking of needs. Monetization is the facilitation of the movements of goods, whilst in most African countries is the other way around. Monetization of anything is the primary thing. Monetization of the evangel of the gospel of God, monetization of everything. So monetization in most Asian countries, even not European countries, by the way, it is a taboo in Sweden to tell people how much you earn or to show off your riches. If you go to a disco and to a club and you don't want a girlfriend, buy a bottle of champagne and start spreading around that you have money. You'll go alone home. You go home alone.
So there's no blessings there.
There's people who can't fathom that life.
Yes. Now, let's go back to the issue of China. So I learned about that the most important thing is the people. Not people in the sense of power to the people. That maxim or slogan has been used, I think it's torn now. It's too old. It's not about power to the people, but it's people first. It's people first. And we're going back to micro and macro again. Who is the people? It's you doing good in your own social station. That's what I learned again from China. It's not more as cultural as pragmatic. It's more pragmatic. You do good in your social station, then there'll be a domino effect. Now, the domino effects you spoke about already, that we learn things subconsciously. If you do good in your station, children around you will do good. There's a tendency we have here in the promenade in North Beach,
Yes.
which I woke up to today, and it made me reminiscent of some places I've lived in the world, including China. In China, you'll go to a big park. People are running, people are dancing, people are doing wushu, people are doing tai chi.
Yeah.
You can just go and do in any group.
You can just join.
You can just join
It's
and
free.
and
Kumnandi.
and just nobody will ask you, have you paid? Are you part of this group? No. Because society is a lived space, is not a monetary space.
Yeah.
That's number one. Now let's
That's
come.
beautiful though.
Let's
That
fast.
is very
let's
beautiful.
let's
I
let's
sort of-
fast forward now to the current issue of the U.S.-China trade war. We're fast forwarding here.
I love that trade war.
A jean trousers or jean pants, to use the so-called correct English, that will cost me 2,000 rands in South Africa, made in China, but it's a levy, so a lei. China put down one rule. They said, our BNP, our gross national income, our this thing per capita is so much. And we have a reason for putting that roof. So you're not going to let my people produce a jean which takes $5 to produce, and you want to sell it here again for $1,000.
It's not gonna happen.
There's a ceiling. That's why most people run to China to go and buy things. All iPhones were made in China.
And the secret deals.
Now, what does that do to brands
In China.
globally? Because most of the things which have led us to passive consumption is a brand, because brand has got status. Societies I'm talking about, including Northern Europe and China and most of Asia, societies, they seem to have a plateau in terms of accumulation of goods. Accumulation of goods, yes, may be status to a certain level. That is not the main common denominator or marker of success. Accumulation of goods.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned also in China.
What is their
Yeah, the mark of success.
the mark of success for them?
There are two ways I can say it. Simple said, without me being a scholar, just an ordinary person, I'll say, is how to be a good person. But put in perspective of identity formation through cultural performances, I'll say how to be a good Chinese. That is the most worrying thing. It's shame. The thing that Chinese fear the most is shame. If you go to my website, there's where I've written about Chinese culture. I explain like the main tenets of Chinese culture.
Sorry, for our listeners, what is your website?
My website is www.sele, which is sele.co.za. There is
SE.
sele.co.za.
Yes.
I
Okay.
explained that the tenets of Chinese culture. One of the main tenets of, let me just quote you three tenets of Chinese culture. One, do good in your social station. Two, connections. Because the value I give you, if I give you 10 rands, I must have it in my mind that I will need help one day. Help that is beyond 10 rands, which you'll easily give me, because I've helped you invest in your hour of need by 10 rands. Because if I don't give you 10 rands today, when you ask me, you might lose a deal of 100 rands.
Yeah.
Where will I go tomorrow then when I'm in trouble myself? But if I give you 10 rands, when I need 50 rands tomorrow, chances are you'll have that 50 rands. And because of goodwill of reciprocity, you're going to give me those 50 rands, because you know that in your hour of need, you might get those 500 rands. But not from me. That's why I'm saying connections, and the relation is called quenshi.
So it's this
You create cycles from. I know people in China who have known each other from primary school. Now, one of the Chinese tenets, as I'm saying, hold your social station. That's the first one. But why they can afford to do that is because every unit they create becomes a family. I know people who've known each other from primary school, secondary school, university. They don't leave each other on the ledge. Never. Ever. It's connections and relationships. It's called Quenshi.
So that's like your strength. It's
That's your
network.
core.
Yeah.
So society is your core. You see now it comes from one individual,
Societal
not
capital.
breaking the chain.
Yeah,
So keep to your social system or do good in your social system. Okay? Connection. Now there is the third one. The killer. Shame. If you do something wrong, it won't only affect you. Everybody you know, your family, your friends you've ever went to school with, they will lose honor.
So you
Where you work, nobody will watch that program again because you have a scandal. Because they're your family now. Guys you studied with, if they are CEOs, they'll get demoted automatically. Because where they work or their industries will go down so very fast. When something like that happens, everybody around you makes the point that you are the one who loses face, so that it doesn't have this ripple effect. But now the nice thing is that at the same time, when there's good happening, it also has a ripple effect. So
that's such a scary,
in a conflict,
scary dynamic.
yes,
It's a very scary dynamic.
in a conflict, then in a conflict, you don't have the situation of Pumasilwe. In a conflict, in Asian societies, I'm not talking about China alone, but China is used this the most.
That's the main example right now.
In a conflict, is not Pumasilwe. Let me show you. No. You try by all means to diffuse the conflict. And when you diffuse the conflict, you look for the common point where you can meet halfway. Now, because of the level of monetary raising, the tangible value of materials, because that is low, it means also monetary issues, they don't become the source of conflict, or they don't become a catalyst that will blow up the conflict. Now, this is long ago, even Confucianism. Do you know in the social scale of Confucianism who was the lowest?
Who?
The business person.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
The business person.
So at Western world just went.
Yes. The business person, the one that is a shopkeeper or has got. China is big on tea and all those things and jade. The one that used to sell that, that was the lowest ranking in the hierarchy of society.
Yeah.
The first people were the honorable people who can think, the scholars, the gentlemen. The most title you can get in China is a gentleman. But in China, to be a gentleman also means to be astute, to be educated. So highest, you are educated. To the extent that education in China even erases your race. When I'm in China, I'm Professor Tembe.
You're not a black person.
You know, a white man in China is not superior. He is a gentleman, he is a good person. If he's ready to share what he has, then he's received with two hands. Going back to the trade war, when most Western companies went to China, they agreed to share their technology so that they can have access, first, to cheap labor, so that they can have, secondly, access to the biggest market in the world.
And they must share the skills with the people of the market.
Even at the rate that prices have to be lower in China, but the numbers, the demographics compensated for that.
Yeah.
Imagine you trying to secure a 57 million, which we are in South Africa. You are securing that market because everything costs $1,000. But in China, the same thing costs $1. Where do you get more profits? In China, of course. If you do the aggregate of numbers.
Yeah.
So those companies, what they did not foresee in terms of the zero-sum game, because the differences here is like, the way I've explained China is like common prosperity for all. Because the monetary issue is the last one. Main issue, have you eaten?
Maslow's
You see,
hierarchy,
in China, when you greet a person you just don't know and blah, 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 blah. Good morning, how are you? Good afternoon, how are you? Good evening, how are you? But when you start speaking the language and you become now part of a clique, you say, hi, have you eaten? That is the greeting. Hi, have you eaten? Now, there are two contexts there. First, they are worried if you are eating.
Which means a lot from
Which means if you are eating, you are alive. Like in Zulu, ngiyakubona.
I see.
It means you exist, you have to eat because you're human. That is the first context. The second context is that because you are not an individual, if you have not eaten and you fall here, it means you're becoming the weakest link in this chain of production. Hey, have you eaten?
So if you're officially part of the chain.
Exactly. You become officially part of the chain.
Some so fundamental. Show.
That is the... So these are the
this
three
constant concept of being connected.
Exactly.
Is a theme throughout the whole
Yes.
space.
So the semi-colonialism that came in the 19th century to China, if you look at China from the perspective that I've just explained to you, it constituted actually shame, because it impeded Chinese citizens of performing their identities. It denied them ownership of themselves, which ironically here in Africa we gladly accept it.
So how do we even move like those, like there's a serious partnership happening between China and a lot of African countries. And I was watching something yesterday. It was about it was in the UN. I think it was 1978. There was I forgot the even law they were trying to pass, or the resolution the UN was trying to pass, and it was pretty much the US versus China, and there China lost, and I think South Africa and a bunch of other countries voted against China. Same thing happened, I think, in 2005 for a different resolution, and China's now had the whole of Africa bar 5 countries supporting them. Obviously China's gained power and allies in Africa. How do we then move those skills? Not so much skills, some of that culture that allows us to grow, and a different norm. Is it ever going to work in Africa? The cultural exchange over and above the skills and monetary exchange.
We are lucky, actually. The instance you talk about, I'll correct you there historically.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a schism there. 1978, or even a little bit before, there was a UN resolution which actually, let me go back a little bit. I'm being unfair here. After the Second World War, the League of Nations became the United Nations. And they started redrawing the world. China, as we know it today, the People's Republic of China, was not recognized as the representative of the cultural Chinese people. It was only in the 1970s that there was campaigning and the resolution was taken and China won. The People's Republic of China became then the People's Republic of China, a recognized entity and the main representative of the Chinese people.
And that's
through the support of African countries. That's where the modern history of China and African countries start. But that was the result. We must remember that in the 1960s, there were anti-colonial wars. And in the divide of post-Second World War, we had the East and the West. And China was part of the East, call it communist, call it socialist, vis-a-vis the West, ideological capitalist or imperialist. So China supported lots of groups of freedom fighters or liberation movements. Now, in the 70s, most of those liberation fighters or liberation movements had become governments and had seats in the United Nations. So that was a shift. That's the proposal or the fight or the campaigning by China to become the main representative of the Chinese people. And how do you wipe away 1 billion people and you say that they don't exist? Because we don't recognize you as a nation state.
Sounds about white.
So it was during that time that there was fusion of friendship, the strongest solidarity ever between the Chinese and the Africans. And remember that at the time, China itself was poor. It was not until 1978 that China started opening up and having reforms. But already then, China used to send hundreds and hundreds of doctors to Africa. China was building railways. We have the main railway, the Tazara from Dar es Salaam to Kampiripoche. That's main railway. It's called
Tanzania.
Tanzania Zambian railway lines was built by China. And Mozambique becomes independent also. There were streams of
recently
doctors.
Kenya, $3.5 billion railway from the ports.
That is after the second Africa-China policy. That is the recent thing. But the recent 10 vis-a-vis China and Africa is when it was not longer built on ideological issues. When China considered Africa as a partner, China went out purposefully in order to grow its industries. They sent out their technicians, their workers, their industries to come to Africa. The policy is called going out policy. That was in the year 2000.
Sorry, just to go off, did BRICS help with any of that stuff?
BRICS is a kid after that.
Oh, okay. Okay, it was made after that.
BRICS becomes...
It's a
consolidation.
Oh, okay.
It's a step forward of those movements.
Okay.
Now, talking about Africa, it was only in 2006 that we have this big... Now, in order to... The first step to rationalize this new solidarity, which starts in the going out policy of the year 2000, and then we have FOCAC, the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation. The biggest one, which was held in 2006 in Beijing, and then the rest is history. And then BRICS comes in after that. But remember that BRICS is not all African countries.
It's Brazil.
It's South Africa
Yeah.
as a gateway of the rest of African countries, which is then BRICS was only BRIC before. It was Brazil, Russia,
India, China.
yes. And then South Africa was invited to come into BRICS.
Yeah, we made the name cooler though.
Very, very cool. That also marries to your question about the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah.
The old Belt and Road Initiative, which was one belt, one road, followed the Silk Route, the traditional Silk Route,
yeah.
which was influenced by natural forces.
Can you explain that
like
to our people, what exactly the belts and Silk Roads are?
Yes, I'm coming to that. China has been the trader long before. I'll use numbers here. China was the king trader of the world, was the king of the seas. Long before 15th century. When we start our history, when we were at school, we were taught about Henry the Navigator, Vasco da Gama, Bartholomew Diaz. Those are kids. And how do they manage to get into the seas? Because in the 15th century, the Ming dynasty closes the doors. Ming dynasty, which was the dynasty like the empire of China at the time, closes its borders, says, no ship is going out, no ship is going in. So the seas are free again. But during the seafaring, which one of the most famous seafaring general, which is Cheng Ho, who came all the way to the island of Kilwa, who came to Mombasa in the 14th century, and then went back again. When he goes back, the emperor closes China. China is close to the world. Nature doesn't allow for a vacuum. Thus, you are Henry the Navigator. You are Bartholomew Diaz.
Nature
So,
doesn't allow for a
the
vacuum.
period of enlightenment, or the era of enlightenment from Europe, which begins with the 15th century, and having the formation of Britain, blah, 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 blah. Those are new kids in the block. And they've only lasted for 400 years, mind you. And we forget that. We forget that prior to the Europeans starting in the 15-something, going around the seas and amassing wealth, which the Dutch did and all that, there was another king. And the king was China. So what we see now is the Renaissance. Because as Europe grows and occupies the seas, is not satisfied only with Africa. Then in the 19th century, before that, they forced Japan to open up. Just before the Meiji Restoration, they forced China to open up. And then they so-called occupied the world. But they only lasted for 400 years. China has got a long record. And by the way, without favoring China, where were the seafaring navigational system made?
Yeah.
In China. The compass. The compass
Is it
technology.
Chinese.
China.
Oh, wow.
Silk. China.
For the sails.
Dynamite. China. Glycerin with explosion. China.
Fireworks.
Gunpowder. China. Through fireworks. China.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and
Pastel
on and on.
apparently
and on.
also
So the
comes from
West
China.
inherits these things.
And then claims it.
I don't care if they claim it or not. They used it
Do you
to
think?
conquer the
Do
rest
you
of the
think
world.
China's on its way back? 'Cause
Now the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, during the time before Ming Dynasty closed, they had another route also, which was not only going to the sea. They will go through up.
throughout Asia, pretty much.
Yes, they'll go
the
throughout
line goes
Asia,
throughout
going
Asia,
to
reaches
Iran
Russia,
and all that,
and then goes into the rest of
and
Europe.
come back. So even in the Belt and Road Initiative, the Belt talks about there's a maritime route
Yeah.
and there's a road route. So coming away from natural forces which created the Silk Road. Now South Africa also becomes part of it, because today it is possible to sail until Africa. And South Africa is an important gateway, as we see South Africa, the role South Africa plays in BRICS as a representation of Africa. So in the Belt and Road also, there is this big proposal, which I think is going to pass this year, or in the next big summit, that South Africa, it is the pilot country in Africa for the Belt and Road Initiative. What is the Belt and Road Initiative? Belt and Road Initiative, it's simple, coordinating
Movement of goods and services.
movements of goods and services, well said. It is not the same way as only movement of capital, because foundationally, China, its society, it's not a monetary platform.
It makes sense now that you said that earlier, that they make money from moving goods, from transporting of goods. Like, you look at anywhere, Amazon, eBay, like your biggest competitors, you see the expensive one, the cheap one's going to be the Chinese one.
Exactly.
And even to the shipping, it might take 3 months, but they have that route, and it gets there for $5 instead of 55, you know. So
Another thing that we have to, if you want to understand China through the traditional tenets that I've just explained earlier on, is the notion that China is not against the zero-sum game. They don't know the zero-sum game. It's not in their nature. That in order for me to be rich, you have to be poor. They don't know their game, that game. It is communitarian. If you go poor, who will buy my goods?
Yeah.
So that's why China makes emphasis on the issue of human prosperity, common prosperity.
So China wants it to be balanced.
They don't want it. That's how they are. That's what their culture has conditioned them onto.
So okay, what the subconscious story is that
Exactly.
this is the dance, and let's keep it going.
Exactly.
Not I'm gonna win.
No. Let us enhance this dance. And that is why this discussion becomes very difficult. Because if you ask China in terms of discussing markets, they'll say, yes, Africa is a big market, we want it. Then people go, wow, they're also coming to colonize us. No, they're not coming on those terms. They say, how can Africa become my market if Africa is poor? And look at the types of investment that China is doing in Africa.
Yeah.
They are not focusing in Congo and South Africa because of the riches. Take one country, for example. Do you know that Ethiopia has never gone to the IMF or nothing?
Really?
Ethiopia has got nothing. Ethiopia has got all of its eggs in one basket. China.
Yes.
And Ethiopia has nothing. And because of the conflict that Ethiopia had before with Eritrea, it meant Ethiopia doesn't have a port. So what did China do? Create a railway road all the way to Djibouti, which is the main port, okay?
Yeah.
But according to the railroad, they created almost 10 special economic zones, because you cannot have a railway and feed it with electricity and let the spaces in between lie dormant, which is the design of South Africa, by the way.
So we have all this.
If you have,
That's true. If you go on a
If
bus
you-
in South Africa, you see it.
if you have generation of electricity, it means every 100 kilometers it must be used, because the same electricity anyway. Actually, by doing that, you are making it possible that those who generate electricity have more revenue to generate even more electricity. And the societies living around there, then they become service provider to the electric generating station, unaware.
So, what the biggest problem is our current mindset
Thank you,
regarding
sir.
our relationship with how we engage with China.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are reading. We seem adamant to hold to the notion of the zero-sum game that has dispossessed us, and me and you today, maybe we're sitting here and having this time because China has moved out to the world. Had China not come to Africa, I can gladly say, maybe people who've been flying, who've been entering an aeroplane in the last 10 years would have never seen an aeroplane in their lives. Because 90% of Africans who go out today, they go to China to get their goods, to come and sell them back. And again, it's because of an open, there's a fallacy here that, oh, China is a socialist country, it oppresses people, but it's easier to go to China without any business license. You buy your goods, you put them in a container, after 1 month they are here. Try and do that with Britain.
Without a business license.
Try entering Britain today.
Put stuff in a container and ship
No,
it
just entering Britain.
I know.
Try and get your visa, number one. Number two, go and buy goods and ship them to Africa with the little money that you
tax
have.
out of your bums.
It's
Tariffs.
Yes, it's out of there. You go to China today, you carry 50,000 rand, 100,000 rand, 2 containers will land here on the Durban port. And then you'll sell those things. On the contrary, you'll find problem with your own people in the customs that you've got.
Once it gets there.
That you've got to pay more in the
Tariffs.
customs because the rating of the goods that are in that container are made where?
In China.
But the taxation system, where is it made?
Oh, right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
Based on whose book?
On the old people, our old book,
On the old book.
playing new rules.
Those who owned this place before, they've left us with their laws, with their economic system, which was simply built to disempower you. And we persist with that system.
I was
How
just
do we
about to.
dismantle those systems? You say choice, cool, I get it. It's like,
Yeah, I was just going back to like the human rights offenses that they always speak about, and I usually find it from the imperialist channels, your CNN, your Sky. It's like they obviously have a gripe against China. Is it true? Is it not as? Is it the same as in every other country?
Oh, now you're going to get me into trouble.
Oh,
In South Africa, we have a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this thing that you're asking me.
Mm.
We have a Bill of Rights in South Africa. So you have a right to go naked.
Mm.
You have a right to go and insult somebody.
Yeah.
You have a right not to respect a person that pays you, because you can go to CCMA, CCMA and complain. All those are your rights. What are your obligations?
As a citizen who has all these rights.
Do these rights give you ownership of your life, of your community, even of your own children? Your children have got rights. You can no longer discipline your children because your child has got rights.
Was we shall
And they've got no obligations. Now, before people say that I'm being a politician and I'm avoiding answering the question, let me take the bull by its
very
horns.
important because
Let me take the bull by its horns. Is to get a belly full that you eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, a right. That is the first right in China. And by the way, Chinese eat 5-6 times a day.
and they live.
The first basic right is to eat. You remember the greeting?
Yeah.
Have you eaten?
Yeah.
That is the first sense of ownership. That's what makes you a citizen. Have you eaten?
And the government takes care of that.
No,
Through programs.
The government see to it that people take care of that.
Okay.
And because you eat and you have ownership of yourself, of your citizenship, then you know your obligations to wake up and go to work. Look, this doesn't even need China. I'll go to McDowell or Adam Grant. Adam Grant has written this book, Originals. Alistair McDowell has written the book, Outliers.
Yeah.
If you read those two books, it's the same notion I'm saying that hit the ground running. People who don't follow crowds, who don't follow mobs. You see, when you see a society that follows mob psychology to mostly to the negative. I'll go to Jack Ma. Jack Ma says that once, and this is a Chinese billionaire.
This is the Alibaba owner.
He says, once it is in the government white paper, or it's been endorsed by the government, you must know that it's too late to go into that business.
So it's all.
So I'm talking about outliers here.
Yeah.
You have to find a niche of new space, break the mold.
Unregulated.
Yes.
Completely free.
and make it useful. And the minute that you make it useful, don't keep it to your chest. Let's
Share
talk
it,
like
share.
this. The owner of Facebook, I don't want to repeat myself.
Zuckerberg.
Yes, I don't want to repeat myself with Steve Jobs. The owner of Facebook, if you see the pattern of all this success, Jack Ma is a Chinese citizen. I mean citizen in the true sense of citizenship.
Yeah.
Because he's got ownership. He knows his obligations. He doesn't even talk about his rights, because once you know your obligations, your rights are a given.
Could you interchange the word obligations with responsibilities?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly,
cool.
exactly. Responsibilities.
Because like when I hear, I guess that's what pops in my head when I hear the word
Yes,
obligations.
responsibilities.
And I don't know if you know Jordan Peterson,
Yes,
where he speaks a lot to young men, and the main thing or the main theme that he constantly brings up for them is effectively taking responsibilities
Exactly.
and building a life where you're able to own responsibilities.
exactly, exactly.
And I guess ownership in a sense is you taking responsibility for what's around you. Like you're responsible for your family, so you own your family. in that sense.
That's a
And-
primordial sense of ownership.
Yeah.
That's what makes you a citizen.
So feeling like you own your country.
Yes,
is a part
that
of
is
it, I
the
guess.
essence of citizenship. I'm not saying that people who are poor are not citizens, but I'm saying that the system that doesn't allow you to own naturally is depriving you of your citizenship. That's why I call most of our South Africans, including myself, because I'm still teaching in these archaic institutions, we have schizophrenic identities, whereby me as uTembe umsonge insimbi ishisa umlungu usinquza ibhubesi, I cannot translate izithakazelo zami, my being, my family history, my family genealogy, my family lineage, to serve me in the corridors of power or in the corridors of converting my cultural capital into monetary capital.
Yeah.
Once I don't have that ownership, once I don't have that space of performing that part of my identity, which localized within South African region, we say Isintu. Be it Sotho Isintu, be it Tsonga Isintu, be it Swati Isintu. Once I don't have enough spaces to practice that, then I'm not a fully fledged citizen. I'm working, if I'm lucky, at 50% mode. And I think personally, I'm working at 20% mode.
Yeah, no.
Because in order for me even to preach this to more numbers of people, I still rely on the old institutions
Yeah, which is
whose main
which are failing
objective,
us already. Is to hold
whose
you back.
main objective was to dehumanize me as an individual at a macro level, but at a micro level, but at a macro level, it was to dehumanize the entire black society.
Yeah.
So that it is within that ambit that you have to look at Chinese human rights. There is a difference between human rights and individual rights. The way I explain China to you, it means it's a communitarian society. Therefore, you cannot analyze human rights within the notion of individual rights. Because in a society where you don't have individual, how do you then talk about individual rights? So it means you are forcing them. Let's go back to the US-China trade war. One of the main complaints from the US, they're saying Chinese government should not interfere with markets.
And they're stealing our ideas.
They should stop empowering their SOEs. So you coming to my home, you are telling me how to feed my children?
Yeah.
Now, this analogy of coming to my home, I'm making it because I'm a South African. I'm a born and bred person here in KwaZulu-Natal. When I say my home, I mean a place which is my homestead, which has got a surname.
Which you own.
Which I own by virtue of me having been born there, me having established a family there, of me speaking that particular language whereby it forms my identity and it makes me a member of a specific society. That is primordial ownership. That is the organic type of ownership. Not that I take something from you and then I bring a piece of paper and say, according to these rights, I've got right of ownership to this place.
Yeah.
Haibo. You brought this law after me and ngikuphucile. Ngiyakuphuca and then that is the person I say paper. I say, no, now it's mine. Look, here I've got a title deed. Who brought the title deed?
They.
You chase away my grandfather from Ngonyameni. Then today, when I say my grandfather is buried here or my great-grandfather is buried here, may I come to my place or at least share? That's what I was saying in South Africa.
Share your land.
May we please share this in Ngonyameni? You say, but the title deed says it's mine. So it means we've got to go back. There's something wrong with our blueprint. We cannot live within an oxymoron. And an oxymoron precludes a vacuum. And nature doesn't allow vacuum.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to power vacuum. If you allow injustice to happen, it means you are allowing a vacuum to happen. There are those. I don't support them 100%, but they make me think all the time. There are those who say that the mere fact that we had 1994, it is because the apartheid regime could no longer sustain itself. Remember, they were isolated from the world. They could no longer enjoy their money and all that. But it's because there was a vacuum where greater mass of the population couldn't exercise their identities. So you had given power to such a big group to the extent that there was a vacuum. There was no living anymore there. So in order for these people who have power, for them to live too,
The others have to live.
to live. Open this window and that window. Because of the double differences in pressure, the windows are going to close. And that's how nature functions as well. So I hope that I've answered the so-called human rights issue in China, number one. But number two, again, which is very interesting. The first human rights charter, when was it written?
In the world.
The human rights charter, as we know it today, when was it conceived?
I don't know.
Yes.
That's why we
are saying human rights. But when it was conceived around about 1945, 1948, League of Nations, United Nations, it was for the coexistence of the West.
World, yeah. Of the West.
Yes, we are not even considered human. Because after those human rights, you still lived for another 4 decades before you got your independence. South Africa was even more. So you were not even counted as human. Then how do you aspire to those human rights which were designed for Europe or for the West to have peace in order to continue oppressing you? How do you consider those rights to be human? So the premise is the blueprint again of these human rights that we make noise about. It's not yours. We are playing somebody else's game.
You borrowed language.
Your father owns a shop, okay? He happens to own a shop. You and your brothers, let's say Baba, you and your brothers, you play football there. You've got cocks, you're playing with the real football and all that. Me and him and my gang were playing with these balls that you take tastic rice plastic,
and just
you put lots of
tie it
papers
down.
and then you tie it and all that. We've got no shoes and all that. We're playing there. And you guys are playing with your fancy
with
shoes
all
and
the
all
Fancy
that.
real
ball.
stuff with the-
Now, when you feel that you are bored or you want to up your game, you call us, come and play. And you even give us cocks, and you even want us to play with the real football. We are going to lose.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to play this game.
We
With-
play
with
barefoot.
this- yeah.
And we don't even play with this bouncing ball. We play with the tastic rice plastic things.
Yeah.
That is exactly what is happening now here.
Very true.
Now, the issue, let's change the rules of the game.
Let's play barefoot with the plastic ball.
Let's meet halfway.
And that's where
Don't don't jump into other person's blueprint. With my students, I usually say, invent your own game. Don't play other person's
it's
game
kinda like
because you're
how-
going to lose.
it's kind of like how Russia meddles in the American elections, and then America goes, "Hey, don't meddle in our elections," and then the world goes, "You've meddled in everybody else's elections."
There you go. There you go. And anyway, I've talked a lot about modernity this, modernity that. My former professor, Arif Dirlik, may his soul rest in peace,
Yeah.
he's written a beautiful book asking whose modernity is it in the first place? Whose modernity is it? I think let's take a break. Whose modernity? Just think that. Whose modernity is it?
Radiodr.co.za. Original podcast. Exclusive.